haven't seen it since she came in. That's true. That's Ann. Look who's here. Hello, Hilda. Yeah. You'll see me again on Sunday. I came down to my injuries because we couldn't get the doctor's Are you sitting right here? I'll park No, I know.
He's done everything.
I didn't play because I was still in my I wish that was a while ago, and now the Linda's back as the spring. I think we might split it. I was I'll put this one back.
I can stay there.
Now that I have one, an official.
Okay. So you have to start over with the card? Okay. Yeah. Which we couldn't do here. Oh, it's Foster.
Did you talk to this new woman over there?
Oh yeah, of course I did. She's got a rock the size of
She's got a rock? That's what I wanted to know.
I'm very cute.
Sure looks like
This is her second meeting.
second meeting.
She was here at our last meeting. We're here for She wasn't. He's probably thinking, you're always older. Yours didn't change. It's time!
Welcome, welcome, welcome. I think we just about filled all the chairs. Wonderful. No, I'm not gonna use a microphone, sorry, you're just gonna have to be quiet and listen. It's delightful to have all you here. I know a lot of you came only for the plants, but that's okay. Jeff Weber is gonna give us an awesome presentation. You will learn an awful lot about the plants. And we also have a really good handout on the back table. I don't know if I have enough for everybody. It's called Wildflowers Naturally, and it's a big fold out, and it tells you all the growing conditions for common wildflowers. Joan is showing it around back there. So if you have, if you want information, stop back and pick one up. And if we use them all, that's terrific. Okay, announcements, BYOP social time. How many people actually brought their lunch? Awesome, that is even better than last time. Last time was about half, looks like about 2/3 this time. I think there is just infinite value in having this social time to be able to talk, meet each other, ask questions, and just learn more about the Mangrove chapter. Now, there are 2 volunteer sheets. They're on clipboards with a pencil. One is in the back there, one is somewhere over there. If you would just pass those around, this is to volunteer to help at our Plant Meeting Day, which is next March 9th. We have lots of categories. Sign up for one you like, or, you know, you'll have more opportunities, trust me. We will have these volunteer sheets at every meeting between now and March, so we'll get you. Yeah, just pass them around. Now, I need to thank Ruth, Bobby, Laura, Willie, and Dave, who have been working incredibly hard to get all these plants together. They are going to help you once the meeting is over. Please do not trample each other to get out there. We are taking credit cards this year. We're using the Square, which you're probably familiar with. A lot of restaurants use it. But this is our first time, so be patient. And buy lots of plants.
Buy them all so we don't have to take them, carry them back.
That's true, that's true. The more you take home, the fewer we have to deal with at the end. Now, serious. We need a new president next year. Yoo-hoo! I have put impassioned pleas in our newsletter. I have talked up here. I have, of course, browbeat the board members. We need a new president. I've served 2 years. I just can't do another year. That's not to say it's a bad job. That's to say I'm my own worst enemy because I want to do more and more and more and more. Anyway, you're not going to get rid of me. I'm still going to be here. I'm going to be membership chair. I'm still going to be doing outreach and probably a whole lot of other things too. But we need a new president. So if you have even anywhere in the back of your mind the idea that maybe you could be president, think about it. Get in contact with me, get in contact with the chapter. I monitor the chapter email every day and I will respond to you. And I am encouraging people to get a buddy, get a friend, and one of you can be president and one of you vice president, or you can be co-presidents, or you can just have a right-hand person, or whatever works for you. But please, we need a president. Our election is January. I've been trying to establish a nominating committee. I can't even get anybody to be on the nominating committee. So, we need volunteers for the nominating committee, and we certainly need a volunteer for president. We also need another newsletter editor. The December issue will be the last issue that our current editor is going to do. She's been our editor for 6 years and has done a terrific job, but she has obligations at home and she just needs to step down. So if you have experience with newsletters, and you don't have to write it, you only have to get it from the written word into our format online. Again, contact me or email the chapter and we'll get you just slotted right in there. Now, Today's native plant sale. Ruth, where are you? There you are. Ruth Ward, who has done an outstanding job.
Thanks. Okay, so it says on here today's native plant sale, but I'm going to talk about native day instead. So we need help with Plant Native Day growing plants. We've got a lot of plants that we're going to have contract grown, and then we have a separate committee working on plants that are grown by members. We, in the past, have not had really any kind of restrictions on us for donation of plants, and we kind of taken them in, and we found out that that wasn't the right way to do it. So we've been certified as a nursery, and the Department of Agriculture requires that we inspect all the plants before they get moved into somebody else's property. So I've got a set of guidelines here that if you're thinking about donating plants, this is really the time to start thinking about it. If you want to start seed or if you want to start cuttings, to get them nice and full for March 9th. I don't want to spend any time at the meeting really going over these because it doesn't apply to everybody, but I'm going to pass this around and you can take a sheet if you want. Another way you can contribute is to donate cuttings, seeds, or plants from your yards. And if you want to do that, there is a contact information for Kirsten Lemke, who is handling most of the propagation this year. She works full-time, so she can't go around to people's homes and collect these things, but if you want to arrange bringing them to her, or if you can't do that, call me and I will arrange for that. I'll pick them up from you and take them to her. Her name and her phone number and her email are on here. If you want to be a foster home, if you don't have any plants and you don't want to start any plants, you can be a foster home. And we will arrange for you to take care of some plants until the Plant Native Day. You would water them and watch for insects and diseases, and it would just be a big burden off of us. We had a lot of plants last year. We had hundreds of plants last year. It was really hard for one or two people to take care of them. So if you want to foster.
How long is the take care of period?
It depends. It depends on what kind of plants we end up having and when they get started. Right now we're just starting. So the earliest would probably be maybe mid to late December through March. But it depends on when you're available. Just if you're interested, call me. So my contact information is on here too. I'm just gonna pass these around to some of the tables. Is that it? Are we gonna do a speaker now?
I just have one more announcement. Please be sure that you have signed into the book back there. We get credit from state for every person that we have at this meeting, so we want to make sure that you all sign in. You don't have to put your email address unless you want to get our newsletter. Otherwise, just go write your name down so that we can get credit for you. Now, go ahead.
Okay, so today's speaker is Jeff Weber. He's speaking on the noteworthy plants of Southwest Florida. Jeff spent his early childhood in the snow country of western New York State, but has called the Sunshine State home for the last 53 years. He graduated from Seminole High School in Pinellas County and went on to earn a Bachelor of Science degree in biology from Eckerd College in St. Pete. After college, Jeff began his career as a state park ranger with the Florida Park Service, and in 1993 was promoted to his current position in Sarasota County Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resources as an environmental specialist. Native plants have always been one of Jeff's passion, and today he manages 5 preserves for Sarasota County and enjoys sharing his knowledge and appreciation of Florida native plants. Jeff has been extremely generous with his time for our organization, and he takes us on walks, and he has participated in Plant Native Day, and we're so happy to have him today. Thank you.
thank you all for inviting me to speak today. It's always a pleasure to come talk to everybody. And I wanted to tell you about some of the noteworthy plants here in our area of Southwest Florida. And so we'll dive in and take a look at some of those. Now, according to the Florida Plant Atlas, Florida is really botanically rich. We're one of the richest floras of any state in the U.S. We have more than 4,700 plant species that occur here. And approximately about 2/3, 68% are native, and about 1/3 are non-native. So we have the ideal climate where plants from all over the world can thrive here, sometimes good, sometimes bad. And vast majority of our plants here are flowering plants. So what do I mean by noteworthy species? Basically, I just want to concentrate on species that are endemic to our area. These are plants that are found only in Florida, not other places unless people plant them other places. Listed species, those that are threatened or endangered, species of special concern. And I'll talk about a few non-natives. I don't really want to focus on too many of those, but a few common ones that we probably would see here in our area. So for endemic species, we have quite a few that are only found in Florida, a total of about 230 to be exact. Several of the states are what we consider endemism hotspots. These are places like the Apalachicola National Forest, the Rock Ridge habitat down in southeast Florida in Miami-Dade County, the Lake Wales Ridge in the central part of Florida where a lot of rare scrub plants occur. So we'll learn a little bit about some of the endemic plants that we actually have here in our area. So I'm just going to feature a few. These are not by any means all that are endemic to our area, but some unusual ones that you might not be familiar with, and probably some that you are familiar with as well. This one is a plant that likes to grow in open, sunny, dry areas. So that sounds like my yard. It sounds like a perfect hit. This one's called Florida Indian Plantain. And what's kind of cool about it is the plants look almost waxy. Like they just have this kind of bluish green color to them when they bloom. And they look very, the leaves are very fleshy.
Could you speak up? We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. So this plant's very interesting because it looks kind of waxy when it grows, almost plastic in a way. And the small flowers are kind of these little maroon flowers that you see here. It occurs basically from our latitude north into the north part of Florida, mostly in the peninsular areas. Now this one you've probably seen. It occurs quite widely in our area. This is what we call Florida milkweed. It's one of many native milkweed species that we have here in this part of Florida. This particular one is primarily found in central Florida. So there is an occurrence up in North Florida as well, which is kind of odd. It's a little disjointed from the rest of the range, but this one is fairly common in sandy, scrubby flatwoods, sometimes in pine flatwoods habitats, and gets these really pretty white flowers with kind of a purplish center.
What's the variety? That one?
That one's a pretty dry. Most of the plants on this program are dry plants, so that's typical of most of our soil here in this area. This one is Florida Green Eyes. You probably have seen this one. One thing that's cool about it is the petals of the flowers almost look like they're pasted onto the flower. So it kind of has an interesting appearance to it. It's got these real interesting kind of scalloped leaves. And this one also likes dry, sandy, sunny locations in the aster family.
Sure. Are many, I don't know if you've ever heard of Neil Gold, but he is in Wisconsin. He is a native plant expert. And he has plants that he calls, like they're easily managed. They don't spread all over. That's not the word that he used.
Okay.
But are any of these that way?
That don't spread too much. I would say the Florida milkweed is one of those. It's sometimes hard to get them to go to seed, so once it produces seed, you might get some more of them.
That Florida milkweed, does it have a common name?
Is there another name for it that you all know of?
No?
Not that I know of. These are probably not South Thomas.
The term is well behaved.
Well-behaved natives. Okay. Okay. I'll try to mention, like, some of them are a little bit more aggressive, but most of these I think are pretty well behaved.
I think I've heard it called the white milkweed.
White milkweed.
Somebody had some of it last year.
There's also a swamp milkweed that has white flowers, Asclepias perennis. So I don't know, that term could be a little confusing if you call it white milkweed. So I would call it Florida just because that one is only found in Florida. So that name is probably.
Does the swamp milkweed need more moisture?
The swamp milkweed prefers wetter. Yes. For sure. And there's actually two species. There's one that gets tall, Asclepias incarnata, that gets pink flowers. And then the small Asclepias perennis is the one with the white flowers. It's kind of a smaller one. Now this one, although the common name is goldenrod, it's actually not a true goldenrod. This one's called Pineland rayless goldenrod. And this one is also, as you can probably tell by the picture, one that grows in dry, sandy areas. So most of these plants are pine flatwoods or scrubby flatwoods or scrub endemics. So if you have that type of soil in your landscape, they would probably work pretty well for you. And it doesn't have really any ray flowers. It's an Asteraceae, but it just has those disc flowers, so that's why they call it a rayless goldenrod. And one that's one of our spiderworts that's native here. This one's called the scrub roseling. And we have these out at Old Myakka Preserve and many other dry, sandy, scrubby areas in Florida. It tends to, like most spiderworts, it blooms mostly in the morning and early afternoon. So by late afternoon, the flowers will close up, but if you get out there at the right time, you'll see them open this way that you see here.
I have spiderwort in my yard that's bluer. Does the color give you an indication of native, not native, or that there's variations?
This particular one is more of a lavender or pink shade, but there is also a blue one, Trigiscantia ohioensis, I think it is. That's the blue spiderwort that's named also.
Have you got olive?
I don't know about that.
What was the question?
Are they all edible? I know some spiderworts are definitely edible. I'm not sure if they all are.
I'm not sure. Now this plant was recently renamed. Botanists love to recategorize things. You know, a lot as research is done and plant taxonomy is done, research more. Sometimes we'll find out that things are closer related to something else than what they thought. So this was formerly a Carphephorus, and I love saying that word. This is Carphephorus odoratissimus, but it's recently been reclassified as Trilissa subtropicana. This is a subspecies of plant that only occurs in Central and South Florida. We used to call this, we call it false vanilla leaf, but the subspecies is also called pineland purple. And this plant, it will do fine in a home landscape, but in nature it does really well in areas that have burned. So it's a real well-adapted plant to fire ecology in the area. If the area is burned at the appropriate time, sometimes the entire flatwoods will just turn purple, pineland purple. So it's usually an October blooming flower. You might still find a few stragglers still blooming out there now. And this is one, I don't really see this one often. We have this plant at Old Myakka Preserve, one of the few places in Sarasota County where it occurs. And it's called scrub wild olive. The fruit looks like an olive, as you can see here, but I don't know if it's edible. So I think birds will eat it, but I don't know if it's edible for humans. But I guess it just resembles an olive. And this plant really likes scrub habitat. So the higher, drier, and sandier it is, the better this plant will do. It grows into a pretty good sized shrub though. So they can get, I don't know, 6 or 8 feet tall at least. So if you plant this, just make sure you have lots of room for it. And this is another morning and early afternoon flower that we see out in the pine flatwoods and in our scrubby areas. This one's called Chapman's Pea or Florida Elysia. The flower opens early in the day and then closes usually by early afternoon. So it's a great attractor for pollinators, especially bees. A lot of the native bees use it, and honeybees. And it's a real easy one, I think, to grow. This one's a really cool one. It's so funny. I see these a lot as I'm bicycling down the Legacy Trail. So if you're really observant, you can see a lot of these plants in various settings. This one is called pine hyacinth. I'm not really sure why. Maybe the color resembles a hyacinth, but the flower sure doesn't look like the hyacinths that I'm familiar with. This is actually one of our clematises. So it looks different probably than a lot of the clematis that you're used to seeing. The flowers are always nodding like this, and they're just kind of a really cool looking little flowers, usually only about that tall, so they're pretty small. And I think these are one that's pretty well self-contained. They don't seem to spread very much from where you plant them. I really like this one a lot. This is called Summer Farewell. This is an excellent pollinator attractor with bees, butterflies, lots of things come to this plant. When it's not blooming, it has really delicate foliage and it's real kind of lacy in appearance. But when it blooms, usually in October, early November, so right about this time of the year, it has these little tufts of kind of whitish flowers. There's another species that's also a dahlia that has pink flowers. They're kind of elongated clustered flowers, and it's called a prairie clover. So there are a couple of these species that grow in our area. This one is endemic, so it's only found in Central Florida, in really dry areas. And this is one I actually have at my house. Now this one I would not consider well behaved. So if you plant yellow tops, it will spread everywhere. So you'll have to probably pull the seedlings out, but it is a pollinator magnet. And I swear, when this stuff blooms, I have just all kinds of different bees coming to the flowers. And they'll grow fairly good size. Like the plants will probably grow about this tall. And they bloom for a fairly long period, usually in the summer months, sometimes more than once during the summer. So you'll get like a flush of flowers, and the plants are just kind of green for a while, and then sometimes they'll rebloom again. One thing that you'll notice, I just think the plant itself is really attractive because it's got these red stems to it and these really pretty green leaves. So it's a pretty attractive plant. This one is a little bit more salt tolerant also, so it'll grow in our coastal areas. So if salt is a concern, this might be a good one to plant in your landscape. And I think this one can probably take it a little wetter. A lot of our plants are really dry, sandy species, but this one will grow in a little bit wetter conditions as well. And I think probably most of us know the Dune sunflower. This grows right here on our beaches, so this one's definitely salt tolerant, and it also attracts a lot of pollinators as well. This one, I would say, is probably not one of the better behaved plants because it seeds pretty freely also, but it's really tough to kill and it's a really hardy plant. So if you plant it, it basically doesn't require much of any type of care, and it will do just fine, as long as it's in a really sunny and dry area.
There was, in one of the, if you wanted to sell the plants, it said you had to have it certified that the right one for the sale has a hairy stem, and I think The leaf has to be sorry, not the right terminology. Am I somebody from the plant seal?
Just making sure that it's the right
Yeah.
variety for our area. Because there are several different varieties in Florida. This is our southwest coast variety, the heritage sunflower. There's some, sometimes that you can buy in the nurseries that are like the East Coast species. It's also Helianthus stabilis, but it's a different variety. So it's better if you can to get the local variety that's adapted to our area.
Okay, thank you.
I had an instance over the summer, I got on the Facebook page and I said, what's fit on my Dutch, you know, my doing sunflower. Somebody said, funny you say that, it's called spittlebug, don't worry about it, it'll be fine. And, yeah.
Yeah, spittlebug, I don't know, they're not real host specific, so you can find them in a lot of different plants. I don't think they really do a lot of damage to the plants, but they look kind of unattractive for a while, but it's a native insect, so you might see them on your plants. And I love these alligator lilies. Now this is actually a plant that likes it wet. So if you have a wet location in your landscape, it kind of grows like an amaryllis or like a spider lily with the long strap-like leaves, and then just occasionally in the summertime puts out these really exquisite blooms. This is another one that I see often along the Legacy Trail when I ride my bike down there. So it likes to grow sort of off in the little ditch banks along the edges of the trail, and you'll see it occasionally.
How tall is that guy?
This one grows, when the bloom comes out, it's probably about that tall, and the leaves are probably a little shorter than that, so a foot or so tall, maybe. And this species, many of the spider lilies have multiple flowers. This particular one just has a single bloom on each stalk, so once a bloom stalk comes up, it'll just have one flower on it. So some of them have multiple, but this one only has one. And a lot of folks are not familiar that we have a holly that looks like an American holly that grows in Central Florida. This one grows in the super driest scrub habitats. So it's called scrub holly, and it's sort of our scrub version of an American holly tree. It's got the same kind of toothed leaves, and like all hollies, only the female plants produce the berries. So if you get a male holly, you will not get berries, but you'll have beautiful leaves like this all year. If you get a female plant, then you will produce those red berries in the winter months. This one is not really found, I don't believe, in Sarasota County. I haven't ever seen it in the wild here. Probably would grow here if it's planted in a landscape, but I most often see this like in the Ocala National Forest, in some of our Lake Wales scrub areas over in the center of the state as well. It's a really pretty holly. It doesn't get as big as an American holly. It's kind of like a miniature version of that, so it's a more compact holly tree. And this is one that's kind of easy to overlook. It's a real low growing plant. This is called axleflower and blooms throughout the summer months with these small white flowers. And it's a plant that's found in kind of moister flatwoods areas. Doesn't really like it too dry. So if it's like a mesic flatwoods or a pine flatwoods habitat, with moderately moist soil, it'll do well. Like sunny areas too. And of course, we're probably all familiar with prickly pear cactus. This is actually the one that's called shell mound prickly pear. And this one grows primarily on coastal shell mounds and in alkaline soil. So it likes it in areas where there's a lot of shell in the soil, like beachy areas. It's also fairly salt tolerant too, so it'll grow on beach dunes and near the coast as well. Attracts tons of bees, especially the green metallic bees, and I forget which ones those are. I think it's the sweat bee of some kind. They really are attracted to the flowers. And of course, the pads and the fruit are edible as well. So, and gopher tortoises love them too. So if you have gopher tortoises, it's a good cactus to have.
What's the moth that affects them?
There's a moth called a cactoblastid moth that's actually put that on the endangered species list now because they feed in the pads and then it will eventually kill the plant. So you might see some cactus that have been infested with that moth. So anyway, it's endangered because of that introduction of that moth here. So I don't see a lot of them that are damaged from that, but occasionally I do come across them that have damage from that moth. So cactoblasted moth, it's called. And if you all came on my walk at Old Mayaca a few weeks ago, we probably saw lots of this Palafoxia out there. It went by pretty quickly this year, though, I think because it's been such a dry year that our fall wildflowers like came and went really fast, so we didn't hang on to them very long this year. But phased Palafox is one that's really typical in the scrubbier areas in our dry, sandy, sunny habitats. And the flowers are really interesting up close. They look almost like clusters of fireworks, is kind of how I describe it. So it's a really pretty.
Jeff, could you comment, when I look at this flower, I say, how the hell does that get pollinated? What creature or creatures are doing the job and how do they do it? Because we've got they can need a very long, and I've seen a lot of these in scrub, but I don't think I've ever seen pollinators on or around them.
Right.
So they're doing it when that back is turned. And if you don't know, that's fine too.
Well, the only thing I've noticed is like really small bees sometimes are attracted to them. And also like small, the blue butterflies, like the Cassius blue, and those I think will pollinate that one. So I think it's small bees and small butterflies primarily. But I'm not exactly sure of the mechanics of it because this is the female part of the flower, the pistil. So I'm not sure where they're getting the pollen from.
Well, that was my question. It's always been a mystery to me. It's a lovely flower, but.
Yeah, the flowers are cool. I don't exactly know the mechanics of how that gets going.
What did ant people call around it? Because I know growing up in Pennsylvania, when I was a little girl, there were ants on the peonies, and I was kind of shaking them off, and my grandma said, no, don't do that, they need the ants.
Right. I don't know, ants might be able to do pollination on those too. I'm not sure.
The other thing that occurred to me was maybe bumblebees could drill in the side.
I don't know.
I don't know that I've seen that on a.
I haven't ever noticed any holes in the flowers.
No, not yet. Anyway, I didn't mean to take up more time than
No,
necessary,
but now you're gonna make me go out there and study it.
Well,
I'm gonna have to find out, because now I wanna know too. And this one is a cool one too. This is a small bay tree. The way that we can tell red bay and silk bay apart is primarily the habitat they grow in. And silk bay grows in the really dry scrub areas. So again, this is one that I haven't really encountered in Sarasota County, but there are some scrub habitats in Manatee County where this grows. And also really common on the Lake Wales Ridge, so on the high, dry scrubs at the center of the state, and in the Ocala National Forest too. It's real pretty because it's got that really striking rust color on the undersides of the leaves. And it's kind of a small to medium-sized tree, so it doesn't get as big as like a red bay tree. But it's also the host of Palomede swallowtail and the spicebush swallowtail caterpillar. So it does have that function in the landscape too. And this is
variety of the bay.
What's that?
What's the other variety of the bay? Because I did see one at Curry Creek the other day, which was dry.
Over there, probably red bay. So
Okay.
that's Persea polosa.
Yeah, it didn't seem that rusty on the bottom.
Yeah, it's not as rusty. Sometimes they'll have a little bit of that, but not as much as this one does. And it gets to be a bigger tree too. Although the ambrosia beetle is having an impact on the bay trees. I don't know if you all know about that, but it's affecting a lot of the red bays and has killed a lot of red bays in its range. It's called the ambrosia beetle. And I don't know if it affects silk bay trees, but I'm assuming it probably does.
Is that what causes that? I remember you said the leaves were very gnarled. Is that from that beetle on the bay trees, or that was something else?
That's something else. There's also an insect that creates galls on the leaves.
Galls.
And so it's really common on red bays, I think on the silk bay as well. And I don't know what insect does it, but it makes a lot of galls on the leaves. But that won't kill the plant, it just kind of looks funky on there, but the ambrosia beetle actually transports a fungus that infects the tree and eventually will kill the trees.
Will it affect sweet bay magnolia also?
Not sweet bay because it's not actually a real bay tree. It's not a persea. So it's actually a magnolia, so that doesn't affect those. I know that's what's confusing sometimes about common names. A sweet bay is not really a bay. So. And so this one is Florida false sunflower. This is one that we don't really see a lot in our area. The only place I know of it really is Old Myakka Preserve in Sarasota County and other places in Manatee as well. I used to work at a state park up in the Orlando area that had a lot of sandhill habitat, and we had a lot of this wildflower there as well. So it likes pretty dry, sandy areas as well. And this one, I didn't really get a good picture of the overall plant, but the way this one grows is it's a single stalk with really reduced leaves. You can kind of see kind of the small leaves, and then each stalk has just a single flower at the top. So sometimes it'll grow like in a clump, and there'll be like 5 or 6 plants, but they're all like individual stalks with a yellow flower at the top. It's a great pollinator attractor also. It's a type of an aster, and all the asters are great for attracting pollinators. This is one that you're probably somewhat familiar with. It's one of the many bachelor buttons or polygolas, milkworts, that we have. This one likes it wetter though, so if you have a wetter location in your landscape, this yellow bachelor button will be great. This used to be on the threatened species list, but I guess in recent years we've discovered that it's a lot more common than people originally thought. So, but it is endemic to central and north central Florida, all the way down to South Florida actually. And if you came out on my walk at Old Myakka, this is another one that we saw. This one's called the scrub palmetto. It's really easy to overlook these when you're walking through a flatwoods area with lots of saw palmetto. And these actually tend to grow more in the scrub areas. So they'll have like a sea of saw palmetto, and there might be a few scrub palmettos thrown in as well. The way you can tell the difference is, like all the sable palms, the stalk kind of comes to a point on the back of the leaves, and also has all of these strings that hang off the leaves. So this is like a trunkless cabbage palm that grows only maybe 2 or 3 feet tall, but never really develops an above ground trunk. So it's a really cool plant. It loves really dry, sandy areas. And to tell this apart from a cabbage palm, if you can see in the picture here how it's got the inflorescence with the bloom on it, if a cabbage palm was that small, it wouldn't bloom until it actually develops a trunk. So this is a sable palm that actually flowers and produces fruit in a real small stage and never really grows a trunk. So it's kind of cool. I think it's a cool one for landscaping.
How many sable species do we have? I thought there was a sable miner.
We have that one here as well, and that looks similar to this one, but grows in wetter areas. So this grows in super dry. The cabbage palm is kind of in between. It can grow in wet or dry. And then the sable miner, the bluestone, grows in the wetter areas. So it kind of runs the range. And the sable miner also is trunkless, so it's another real low growing one like this. All right, so we'll talk about some of the threatened and endangered plants that we have in our area. This one is golden leather fern. Most of us are familiar with the giant leather fern, and you see that one a lot along the Myakka River in some of our mangrove areas. It's pretty salt tolerant. This one is another one, and the way that you can tell this one from the giant leather fern is it tends to be a little bit smaller in size. And when you look at the leaflets, the brown is the spores on the backs of the leaflets. So on the giant leather fern, the entire leaf and all the leaflets would have spores on it. But on the golden, it just is the top several leaflets that have the spores. So on a long leaf, there'll just be a few leaflets at the end that have spores on them. So they look similar otherwise, but that's how you can tell the difference.
I thought another field mark for me was that with the giant leather ferns, the leaflets are kind of overlapping. On the coastal golden leather fern, there's a difference on the stem. There's more of a distance, so they're more distinctly separate.
I think that is true. The ones I've seen kind of look that way too.
Yeah, and that's, for me, if I'm not sure,
Mm-hmm.
that is a field mark.
Yes, this one does tend to be a little bit sparser with the leaflets on the stem, more widely spaced, I guess. This one's really beautiful. This occurs in our scrub areas, and it's actually a federally threatened morning glory, also state endangered and endemic to Florida. So it's a really unusual, cool plant, but it only grows in the really, really dry scrub areas. And it grows as a vine, usually on the ground, with these really pretty blue colored flowers. I've seen plants of this in eastern Manatee County and some of the state preserves there. Also up in the Ocala National Forest, and I think on the Lake Wales Ridge it also occurs there. But it's really pretty. It usually blooms in like August, so it's the hottest time of the year to be out in the scrub to look for it, but it's really a delight when you find it. And it doesn't have very big flowers. They're kind of smaller, but they're a pretty blue morning glory flower. And one that's really narrowly endemic to just west central Florida, to just a few counties. This is the Florida golden aster. This occurs in Pinellas, Hillsborough, Manatee, DeSoto, and I think a little bit into Highlands County. So just 5 counties in our area. Actually, I'm sorry, it's Hardee County. Hardee, that's DeSoto. So just Hardee County. Hillsborough, Pinellas, Manatee, and Highlands. And the way you can tell this one from our regular golden aster that we run into all the time is it has these kind of rounded leaves, and they're real tightly clustered along the stem, kind of ascending, and very silvery and fuzzy. So it's a really pretty plant, and it blooms about this time of the year, usually in about November is when they come into peak bloom. There's a pretty good population of it up at Boyd Hill Nature Park in St. Petersburg. So if you get up in that area, you might be able to see some of them. And I think there's also some at Lake Manatee State Park too, in some areas. But we don't have it in Sarasota County naturally occurring. And another one that's in peak bloom right now is Garbaria. I was just up at Lake Manatee this past weekend, and there's a lot of this that's in flower right now. This makes a woody shrub that grows maybe 2, 3, 4 feet tall and gets these really light lavender colored flowers. They're really nice. They bloom for about a month or so, about this time of the year, attract lots of pollinators, and it's a really hardy plant too. It likes it super dry, so it needs to be a dry location. And we all love this one, the pine lily. These grow mostly in our wet flatwoods areas, some of our mesic flatwoods as well. And this is a really, fire is a really important factor for this plant. They tend to bloom and grow best in areas that have frequent fires. So you might be able to grow this in the landscape, but they're kind of fickle in a home landscape. They do so much better in the wild. So, usually late September to about mid-November is the time to see them in bloom. Anytime you go out in October, you should be able to find them in the areas where they occur. It's just beautiful. I love those a lot. One of my faves. This is another plant, though, that likes it wet. This is called Florida loosestrife. We probably walk over this thing all the time and don't even notice it because I find it all the time. I look down and I'm like, oh, there it is, right there. So it likes wet areas. I've seen it a lot out at Mayaca River State Park, actually by the Nature Center out there in the field. There's just a bunch of this loosestrife that grows there. It grows at Curry Creek Preserve in some of the lower, wetter areas there. It's a ground cover type plant that kind of blends in with the grass. So unless you're really looking for it, you might not see it. And it has these really pretty kind of light pinkish purple flowers that have kind of a stripe that goes down the center of each petal. But it definitely likes it wetter, so you need to have sort of a wet area for that one. And I think we already sort of talked about this shell mound prickly pear. The other cactus I think that I showed was actually the one with the gray spines, and that's the Puntia humifusa or Australia. So this is actually the shell mound right here. The shell mound has yellow spines, and the other cactus usually has gray spines. And this is actually an orchid that grows in our area. It's a terrestrial orchid. I actually saw one of these at Old Mayaca Preserve in a mowed lawn area out there, so I was really shocked when I found it. It also grows in pastures quite a bit. So I think it's just a plant that's sort of a relic from before areas were converted to pasture or lawn that comes back year after year.
There used to be a really big patch on the interstate between Sarasota and Charlotte County, southbound. A really massive planting. If you capture it in bloom, you can't miss it.
Is it still there?
I haven't been on the interstate in years.
Okay.
But I remember when we were driving the other day, you couldn't miss it when it's in bloom. And in Conagora, on Airport Road, it went the entire length of the road, and then, I don't know who it was, the state, the city, bulldozed it and put sod.
Now you don't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. This one I'll just find in the most unexpected places. I'll be driving by a pasture sometimes, and I'll just see a few of these that popped up in the pasture. But they do like it a little bit wetter, so they don't grow too much in like scrub.
And they'll grow in mass.
Yeah, sometimes it'll be a lot
so
of it.
nice.
Yeah. Yep. But it's pretty. It's kind of a salmon color. It's like an unusual light red color. And a lot of people don't even realize that our inkberry is a threatened species. It grows all along the beaches here, but there's also an invasive exotic one that's a Scabola toccata, I believe it is. The way you can tell our native one from the invasive one is this doesn't show the mature berries, but they actually turn kind of black when they ripen. On the invasive one, the berries are white. So if you see these with white berries, they're not the native one. The ones with the black berries are native. Also, the leaves are a little bit shorter and fleshier on our native inkberry. The non-native one has kind of longer, kind of more papery leaves, so they're not as leathery and fleshy as these. Another name for this plant is half flower, because it looks like somebody sort of sliced the flower in half and you just only have like petals on one side. It's a cool plant though. And of course our air plants, this is cardinal air plant. This is actually endangered, this one and the giant air plant. So the cardinal has these really brilliant spikes that are red and with the small purple tubular flowers that come out. These tend to grow sort of in a cluster, generally, in the trees, and like to grow like along riverbanks and really shady hammock areas, usually high up in live oak trees is the preferred place that they grow in.
Is there something similar looking to the, excuse me, they're all over my yard, and they're in pygmy ponds, and they're gonna blast in the sun, but they're have multiple colored, you know, from the orange to the purple, and I never know where they're gonna show up.
That's interesting. There's also some that are called grass leaf air plants that have really thin leaves. I don't know if it should be that one. And then the giant air plant, they, the flowers are more cream colored on this one, so it's a little bit different from flower. But both species are endangered because of the introduction of the evil weevil. This was a Mexican bromeliad weevil that came in accidentally in some of our cultivated bromeliads, and now has infested a lot of our natural areas. It's established here in Sarasota County. You can sometimes find like the air plants on the ground, and if you sort of tug at the inner leaves, they come out real easily, and they've all been eaten at the base of the leaves, and that's the damage that that weevil does. So it is lethal to the plant, and I always tell people, do not collect these from the wild and move them to other areas, because you could be helping to spread that weevil. So it's best to not move these from where they're located. And right now, I don't think there's like no biocontrol that I know of for the weevil. So hopefully we can figure something out before it really decimates the population of all of our air plants. So we'll talk about a couple of bad plants. And some of these you're probably familiar with. This one is called rosary pea, and it tends to grow in fairly dry areas. It seems to prefer those areas, and produces just a profusion of these really hard red seeds with a small black eye on them, and kind of purplish flowers. So it has like a purplish pink flower followed by these seeds. The seeds are lethally poisonous. If people eat them and chew them, it releases a toxin, so it can be fatal. So make sure kids don't pick these and try to eat them. That would be bad. Not good results. And of course, Mexican petunia. So many people love this plant, and it's still available in the nurseries here locally, but it is super highly invasive. So on these plants where you see the FISC category 1, we used to call it the Florida Exotic Pest Plant Council, would rank the plants. Now it's the Florida Invasive Species Council. And so category 1 are the most invasive plants. So those are the worst of the worst. And then there are many species that are classified as category 2. They're invasive. We're not really quite sure yet if they're really bad or not, so we're keeping an eye on those. But the category 1s are the ones that are really spreading actively into our country. And you can see like how it can form like a big monoculture once it gets established in an area. Yeah, there are some category 1 plants that they still sell. So.
Yeah, I don't understand why the state allows them to sell something like that.
Either.
And people see purple and they love it.
I know. And the thing with this is it just blooms like throughout the year, so it always has this attractive flower on it. And it's really easy to take care of. You don't really have to do much to it, so that's why people love it so much. But it's bad in our natural areas. And of course, Brazilian pepper. This was brought here because of its beautiful red berries that people, it always has berries around Christmas time. And when we were kids, we used to call these Florida holly trees, but it's related to poison ivy. So some people are allergic to the sap, and it's definitely can be really irritating to the respiratory system when it's burned as well. So this one has male and female plants like our true hollies do. So only the females produce berries, but the male plants produce the flowers that produce the pollen that helps pollinate the female plants as well. So, and birds love the berries and spread this plant everywhere. Raccoons do too. So we really actively try to work to control Brazilian pepper on our county lands.
Joe, is there a recommended way to get rid of it if you have it adjoining your property, like next to your property, really close?
That's a tough one, especially if it's mature bushes or trees.
Very mature.
Mature. Yeah, that's a hard one. Without using chemicals. I mean, I don't know any other way.
And you would, and with chemicals, like if you were to cut it down and remove it, where would you take that? To the dump? I mean, where would you take it?
Well, if you're gonna cut it, it's probably best to do it when it
When
doesn't
it's
have
not
berries.
good fruit.
So, like in spring and summer is probably a good time,
Good idea.
but don't do it this time of the year because they're loaded with berries. So
And
those,
would you have to then treat the stump?
yes, so you can, a lot of times we don't even cut the trees down. We just spray around the base of the trunk. And the bark is so thin that the herbicide just soaks into it and it will kill it that way. But if you want to cut it down, you just have to treat the stump.
And it would be the brush killer?
We use, what we use is Garlon, but you can buy Brush Be Gone.
That's what I mean, brush be gone.
Brush Be Gone is
But,
have that.
and the same by the base would
Yes, if you cut it, make sure you just coat all the outside part of it where the cambium is.
Yeah.
And any surface roots that are sticking out, because if you don't treat those, sometimes it'll sprout off the
No,
roots.
that's good to know, thank you.
So that's the best way to control it.
Appreciate it.
It's best to hand pull it when it's little if you can.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes it's already a big, huge
No,
tree.
the trunks are this big.
And just one tip, right after you cut it,
Yes.
put the herbicide on, because it'll form a seal and it won't absorb it. You have to do it
Immediately.
right away.
Yes.
Right away. Yep, the sooner the better. I think it's like, don't wait more than like 20 or 30 minutes and then it like seals over. So do it very quick. And this one, I'm constantly picking these burrs out of my clothes all the time. So this is Caesar weed. People love the little pink hibiscus type flowers. They are pretty, but the plant is really a noxious weed. And it really grows best in like shady, moist areas. So where I see it the most is usually along riverbank areas, in like low drainage areas. It likes it shady and kind of wet, so that's usually where that occurs. And of course the seeds are burrs that stick to your clothes, they stick to animal fur, so wildlife help to transport it as well. So it's just not a good plant to have around. So there are many invasive plants. I only covered just some of the really common ones that we have here. But you can go to this website and learn about all the many different invasives that we have here. There's also Florida invasive species. Maybe I believe, anyway, it's FISC.org. And they also have a list of the Florida invasive plants that are really problems here. They'll tell you how to ID them and like where they're found, but they don't give like treatment recommendations. I know like our local cooperative extension offices are really good resources for that information. And there's a lot of information on the web about treating. Really hard.
Jeff, would you comment on Melaleucas?
Do I have to? No. Yeah, so Melaleuca is another one that I didn't highlight, but that's a really terrible one. Those were brought here because at the time, like around the turn of the century, you know, the thought was we really wanted to dry up swamp areas so that we could develop these areas. So, I mean, millions of seeds were like just scattered from airplanes across the Everglades. And so then it became a really bad problem, especially in South Florida. And they kind of gradually sort of migrated up this way. So there's some clumps of them here in Sarasota County in the wild too. But in recent years, they've done some research and they introduced a thrip, I believe it is, that feeds on the new growth of Melaleuca. So it's really kind of hampered a little bit some of the seed production of the plants. But that's another one that basically you have to cut that one down or like hack into the trunk and treat it to make it die. With all that papery bark and stuff, you can't just spray the outside of it because it'll never get to the cambium. So you have to cut the trees down and treat the stump. or use like a machete and hack into the sides of it and then squirt herbicide in it that way. But yeah, that's one that is a really bad problem, especially across the Everglades areas.
Believe it or not, in Lee County, where they have the native plant sale, the officer who's in charge to, okay, when a big industrial park is built, that they don't take out the proper trees, it was nothing but melaleuca. And she went in and they were covered with tens of thousands of the butterfly orchids.
Really?
So, for what, and she's in the orchid group.
Okay.
So the company or the developer allowed her to rescue the orchids in exchange for set points before they removed the melaleuca and planted trees. But I thought that was interesting.
Wow, I didn't know that orchids would grow much.
There were plants. I have some to this day from buying them for $5 30 years ago.
Wow. I'm glad they rescued the native orchids anyway.
Thank
So
God.
that's right.
The officer that was for the Lee County was also a plant person, or that would have been for us.
Yeah, wow, interesting.
Has the floor mulch made any difference in the melaleucas or not?
Of course, we always tell people not to buy cypress mulch and that flora mulch is the preferred. I don't think that, like, as an industry, it's really affected the infestation of melaleuca in Florida, so it probably helps a little bit, but hasn't really put that much in it.
Thank you.
But definitely buy flora mulch if it's available. So we all know by planting natives, we can really bring a lot of life to our landscapes. And I hope I've shown you that with a lot of these plants, that they're big pollinator attractors. Many of them also produce berries for birds and other things as well. So as we know, in Southwest Florida, our natural habitats are disappearing really quickly. Development is spreading fast in our area. So in my view, home landscapes are becoming really increasingly important for us to try to plant the natives that bring the wildlife and help sustain the wildlife that we have here. So there's a great initiative, I'm sure you all know about it, because I know this chapter has been talking about this for a while. Doug Tallamy has a homegrown national park movement, and to learn more, you can check out the website there. There also, the idea is one landscape and one property at a time, we can collectively build our own national park. So I encourage you to start doing that, and if your property is eligible, to register it as part of the homegrown national park program. Yes.
Oh, in Sarasota County, you have conservation areas. What's the story with conservation?
Conservation area, like in a developed area?
Developed.
So a lot of times when areas are developed, they're required to set aside the wetland areas as a conservation area. And then management of those areas is sort of left up to the HOAs. Oftentimes nothing really happens in those areas except that it's green space that's set aside.
But there's no, you have no teeth, the county has no teeth on that?
I think when they review the permits and stuff for the subdivision, some of our regulatory folks in the county do look at that. I'm not really in that side of it, so I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I know that they have to go through permitting and development, site development to get permitted.
So can we put a native plant in? Can we plant something in?
Actually, I can address that for you, Charlie. Having worked on an environmental committee in an HOA, and when the preserves are put aside, they are supposed to be maintained so that only a small percentage is non-native. They are, so going, any planting by anybody other than a licensed landscaper is prohibited, even if you think it's going to be a good thing. Because you go in under the dark. I didn't advise you to go in under the dark of the night and do it, but the idea is to keep but for those people in HOAs in Sarasota County, as everybody probably knows, there's not a single natural pond in Sarasota County. They're all man-made stormwater detention systems. I don't know how many there are. Let's just say there are 2,000. 3,000, doesn't matter. How many of them are in compliance with the regulations? Zero. And the Sarasota County is, sorry to digress. But Sarasota County is right now, our friend Molly Holland is under pressure from the state saying, you can't let these people get away with this. You're gonna come down hard on people. So if you are in an HOA that has preserves and has stormwater detention systems, if you at least appear to be making an effort, you're gonna save your community a lot of pain and heartache and money. So I just happen to know that because I've been working on that since 2015.
So I forgot you were intimately familiar with
Yes, so that if you do go in, the implications, if you go in and if you remove things that are native, or if you reduce the footprint, your community can be put back to the earliest. You can be put on I'm not saying this right, reporting notifications where instead of like, you get your permit, things are fine, and then 30 years later you're fine. But if they find that you're in violation, you're going back to having biologists come in to do the analysis, to do the reports. It is very, very expensive. There aren't fines, but the costs involved in being in violation are immense. And I think Molly's going to be looking at that too.
It's really sad that a lot of these places are set aside, but then they're once they're signed off on by the permitting agencies, they're never maintained. So then they just become like exotic plant beds. So they don't maintain the non-native and take the non-native out once it's signed off.
You have a report, so a certain number of trees and shrubs, something native to get your CO. As soon as they get the CO, and I don't understand this mentality, they cut them down and put
Something else.
something gauche, some exotic, not even looking good.
Yeah,
There's no, there's no follow-up.
So anyway, to end on a good note, there's a big plant sale going on outside, and many of the species that I have here pictured are available for sale after the program. So I tried to find some pretty pictures of all of them so you'll see what they look like when they bloom. Wait till you take a picture. All right, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you all learned a lot today. Thanks for being a good audience, and I'll take any questions you have that I have already answered.
Do you have the plant list for all Pyaca on the web somewhere that we can see that?
I could email it to somebody.
Send it to Bobby?
Send it to Bobby.
We have one.
I was gonna say, I think I emailed it, but I can send it.
Nobody gets to leave yet.
And I didn't get it, so I'm
Thank you, Jeff.
Sure
Ruth and her crew have to get set up so they can take the money and get your plants to you and get them in bags and stuff like that. So give us a couple of minutes here. Thank you all for coming. This has been wonderful. Get with some of your friends and figure out who's going to be president after me. You will notice that on your list of coming events, yoo-hoo! Please wait a minute before everybody rushes